I've heard it said before that training without testing is a waste of time, and I don't necessarily agree with that. We'll do a test. All too often, trainers will give a test at the end of their session that asks their participants to recall the information shared. What you're actually measuring with that sort of test is not the effectiveness of the training. What you're measuring is the short-term memory of your participants. Whoop-de-doo. Here's different things you can do to improve that evaluation of your training effectiveness. The first tip is to measure the participant's ability to apply the information. Don't focus so much exclusively on retention. Focus on the ability to apply information. So at the end of the session, are they able to take information set A and apply it to scenario B and use that to make a judgment, to make an assessment, to analyze a situation, to determine the outcome, to follow a procedure, to come to a conclusion? If your participants are able to apply the information at the end of your session, that's a much better indicator of the effectiveness of your training. The second tip is to think about testing them several days after the session ends. Now, what this does is not only test their ability to recall the information, but it measures their ability to recall the information a period of time later. If your participants are able to recall that information several days later, that's a much better indicator that your session was successful. It also provides another round of repetition as they go through the material. So there's a lot of good that comes from testing them some period of time after the session ends, not necessarily smack dab at the end of the session. The third tip is when you get to that test, change the scenarios that you're using. So don't just rehash scenarios and information and situations that you talked about a lot in the classroom. Rather, change up the details so that it forces your participants to really work through the problem with a fresh set of eyes. The other thing you can do is make combinations. So in other words, they have to apply two separate unrelated concepts at the same time to be able to get to the correct answer. That is really going to tell you, was your training effective to the point that they're able to take several concepts and put them together to answer the questions. So testing to evaluate training effectiveness. I absolutely agree that it should be done. We'll do a test. I don't agree that it should be a test at the end of the session for retention. These techniques will absolutely reveal whether your training was effective or not. Spoiler alert, they also help your participants. By asking them to apply the information, will help them to take that information to a deeper cognitive level. It will increase their ability to not only understand and apply the information, but retain it for a longer period of time. By testing them several days later, it gives them another round of repetition. It gives them another reminder. So again, you're kind of fighting against them forgetting some information, and you're giving them another chance to deeply embed that information in the old gray matter. By changing up the scenarios, it gives them another opportunity to practice the information, but in a slightly different way. They have to think about it. So the people with really good memories can't just plow through the test real quick. They have to really stop and think. And again, that helps them to be able to utilize the information you've trained them on. And isn't that kind of the point?